I call Mark Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. I was just wondering if I might share my own context around how this whole situation has arisen. Well, I think it's relevant. So, if I go back to 2010, April 2010, and at that time, actually, I'd been living up in the Middle East with my family for a fairly long time. I was still very involved in trying to grow my own business up there, and I was lucky enough to be asked to assist with a trade delegation that was coming up to the Middle East, led by our Prime Minister, and also had our Trade Minister, Tim Grocer, on it. Of course, everyone would remember that shortly after arriving in the Middle East, we had a tragedy back home where on Anzac Day, one of our Iroquois went down and we lost 3 of our servicemen. And the Prime Minister, of course, did absolutely the right thing, and he decided to come home to do what he could to support the families and be here with the nation over what was a very difficult time. Our Trade Minister stayed up there and carried on with the delegation, and I was lucky enough to get some time with him, along with some other business people, Kiwis that have been up in the Middle East for a long time, and we raised with him and we talked about the issue around a free trade agreement. And he was very open with us about the fact that there was a real challenge to face, and that was around this issue with the live sheep shipments, the perception that an agreement had been broken and that it lay with Saudi Arabia, who of course are extremely influential and have a leadership role within the GCC. Now, I just want to address at this point the point that Mr Shearer made around the fact that the government is trying to blame the Labor Party, who were in government at the time when that agreement was made. I don't know the context, I don't know the details around why that agreement was made. Well, I'm certainly not pointing the finger at you. I don't want to see 5,000 or 6,000 of our sheep, of our Kiwi sheep, lost being moved on an ocean shipment. So if that was the right decision to make, I fully support that. I think that was the right thing to do. However, what that created was, in the other partner, the Saudi partner, is that we broke the deal. And in my world, when I was in business, the minute that you break a deal, for whatever reason, even if it's the right thing to do, you immediately accept legal risk. You immediately take on legal risk. So I think the point around was there genuine legal risk in relation to this deal gone wrong? Absolutely there was. Whether or not, or whether a party was going to trigger that and take it into court, we don't know. That is crystal ball stuff. But the reality of it is, and the Minister was very right, when he had a look at the situation and clearly identified that as a country we were carrying legal risk. That cannot be debated. In terms of economic opportunity, I can tell you now, as someone that was lucky enough to spend a fair bit of my adult life in the Middle East building a business, is that the GCC, they're very good to do business with. We've got lots of services and products that we can offer up there. We've got a large Kiwi community living throughout the GCC, and there will continue to be real opportunities for us, especially around this agri-hub and agri-business. So is there economic opportunity up there, and was it at risk? Without a doubt. In terms of diplomatic risk, of course there was diplomatic risk. I remember that when New Zealand, when we got blocked in getting our apples into Australia, the government got alongside our apple producers. It was the right thing to do. We needed to try and open that market up, and that's exactly what we did as a government. Make no mistake that the Saudi government would have taken exactly the same position with one of their own citizens if they felt like a deal had been broken. So there was also, we were carrying significant diplomatic risk. When I spoke to Tim Grocer in April of 2010, he was quite right in saying this was complicated, but they were going to be throwing themselves, their resources. We got very good trade negotiators. We got a very strong Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and they'd be working to try and find a solution to allow us to unlock the negotiations around a free trade agreement. And that's exactly what they did. I'd just like to highlight and support the Minister's comments around reading the report. It's important now the report is out that people get it, they read it, and they can make up their own, they can come to their own conclusions on it. But there are a couple of points that I do want to make that I think come to the heart of it. On page 48, bearing in mind that we haven't had a lot of time to read the report, was there corruption or bribery? So there's 4 points that they go through here that she's very detailed, and it's a very good report, and I support the Minister's comments around. I'm not challenging anything in here. He's not going to challenge anything in here. The whole purpose of the report is they've spent a lot of time, they've gone into a lot of detail, and I think they've done a very, very good job of it. But basically she said, therefore, we do not consider that an offence of bribery could be established. We found no evidence or reason to refer the matter onto an appropriate agency to carry out a criminal investigation into corruption or bribery. She couldn't be more clear. They couldn't be more clear about what they're trying to say in the report. Was there a facilitation payment? This is another accusation that's been levelled at the Minister for months and months. Was there a facilitation payment? We were also asked whether there were any facilitation payments. The Ministry of Justice has explained a facilitation or grease payment as a small payment made to a foreign or public official to speed up a service to which the payer is already entitled, and they found that there were no facilitation payments. They're very clear about that. There were no facilitation payments. I don't know how much clearer they could be. If I move forward, how was the money spent? So, of course, this is truncated, but how was the money spent? The Ministry made a $54 million payment to Heart Est on the 21st of February 2013. The rest of this part covers the spending of the remaining $7.5 million allocated to the partnership. We have reviewed NZTE spending from the time the funds were transferred from the Ministry and found that the spending was made with appropriate financial authorities in place. So they're very clear that actually the right financial authorities and the right financial processes were in place. There were no facilitation payments. If I move on, and I actually come to the point that the Minister opened with, and this comes to the heart of the report. We found no evidence of corruption, bribery, or a facilitation payment. The arrangements entered into were lawful. Use of public resources and public money was spent with the appropriate financial authorities in place. You can't be any clearer in the report. The Minister has stated clearly that some things could have been done better, right? And I guess just about all of us could claim at some points in our lives that we could have done something a bit better. But actually, there's a big gap between doing something better and actually doing something illegally. And so, Mr. Speaker, I am very happy to stand up in the House today and to support the Minister of Foreign Affairs and say that both he, the Speaker of the House, the Right Honourable David Carter, and the Honourable Tim Croser, along with their officials, actually have done a very good job of finding a way to be able to unlock the ability for us to enter into strong negotiations around a free trade agreement. The Honourable Todd McClay is progressing that very well up there, and I can tell you now from my own contacts up there and my own networks up there, where I've invested heavily, not only financially but also in friendships and networks, is that they feel that this thing is moving very, very positively in the right direction. So if I can just finish up by saying, Mr. Speaker, that there's real opportunities that exist up in the GCC. Someone mentioned food security. Food security is very important for them. It's something that we take for granted down here. I'd be the first one to say that for whatever reason, when those sheep arrived and through their lambing up in the Middle East, something went wrong. I didn't like it either. I didn't like the losses that they faced. There's all sorts of reasons behind that. Obviously, climate is the obvious one, and that there wasn't ability to transition them properly. I don't know. I'm not in the detail, but I'm just guessing. But I would say that the GCC countries are making big investments in to be able to provide protein for growing populations. And actually, New Zealand has got a huge opportunity there to be at the forefront of technology and innovation and to be able to assist them with the issues that they face with food security. Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.